Amidst the dramatic escalation of events in Colombo, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been appointed as the acting president of the crisis-hit country. The Assembly Speaker confirmed his appointment after a massive showdown took place between protesters and the security forces outside the Prime Minister's office. The Sri Lankan police resorted to the use of tear gas to disperse the swelling crowds. Angry demonstrators had hit the streets of Colombo, chanting slogans against the Rajapaksas after an emergency was imposed in the island nation, following President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's departure to the Maldives.
With me, I have one of the protesters who, in fact, has come here from Galle, that is the southern province of this country, which is 250 kilometers away. His name is Basil Kantrige and he is 35 years old.
Yes, I came from hiring lorry. Yes, all of the people are gathering to here and we want to get rid of Rajapaksa regime. That is why all of the people and especially in young people gathering here, and we request go home Prime Minister Ranil, and we can build our nation and give our stolen money. That is our request.
I understand you are also a school teacher. So yes. How has education been hampered because of this ongoing protest?
Yes, the schools are closed. That is why the people are suffering and suffering. We are waiting and waiting the people for getting the fuels as well as the food and so food items. They have faced terrible problems. The schools are closed. The school children are suffering and they have no good knowledge, especially the small children. They have faced different problems. They can't write, they can't read, they can't speak. That is the problem. Therefore, we want to build our nation with our people. That is why we gathered here.
Thank you very much.
The massive public outrage comes after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, fled the country with his wife, 2 bodyguards in Antonov military aircraft to the Maldives. Now, sources claim that the president will land in Malé and then head to some other destination. His resignation will reportedly be delivered to the speaker after he reaches his final destination. Now, Gotabaya left the country in an alleged bid to avoid detention after stepping down. The newly appointed acting President Ranil Wickremesinghe will try to rein in the cash-strapped nation till Parliament elects an MP to serve out the presidential term that ends in November 2024. However, Wickremesinghe has himself had announced his willingness to step down after peaceful transition of the government. Now, for more on this, our correspondent Dasuni Athoda is joining us live from Colombo. Dasuni, thank you for joining us. What can you first tell us about the situation on ground currently?
Well, yes, and as you can see all around me, this is just a few meters of the official entrance to the office of the Prime Minister. There are ambulances on site trying to treat casualties. We did see a few casualties being carried away by
Well, our correspondent Dasuni Athoda is reporting from the streets of Colombo, where of course there is a lot of chaos and unrest at the moment. We will try and get her back online with us. But as you know, dramatic escalation of events in Colombo, Sri Lankan Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been appointed as the acting president of the crisis-hit country. These are just some of the updates we have till now. The Assembly Speaker confirmed his appointment after a massive showdown took place. Sri Lankan police resorted to the use of tear gas as well to disperse the crowds outside the Prime Minister's office. This after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled the country on the day that he was expected to resign. Angry demonstrators hit the streets of Colombo, chanting slogans yet again against the Rajapaksas. This after an emergency was imposed in the island nation. Now, the massive public outrage, as you can imagine, comes after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa fled the country with his wife, 2 bodyguards in Antonov military aircraft to the Maldives. Now, as per sources, The president will land in Malé, then head to some other destination. Now, the details on that are not clear. His resignation will reportedly be only delivered to the speaker after he reaches his final destination. What we do know so far is that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has been appointed as the acting president of the crisis-hit country. Once again, we have Dasuni joining us live from Colombo. Dasuni, can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can hear you right now.
Right, Dasuni, now my question to you is, what challenges lay ahead for Ranil Wickremesinghe as the acting president now?
Well, it is quite obvious that the people around, as you can see, they are dissenting now against the Prime Minister who has just taken up the role as the acting president. So there is a big challenge for the acting president to now curb these protesters, or at least bring a sense of security and calmness, because just a few meters away, as of right now as well, there is tear gas that is continuing to be fired right outside the entrance to the office of the Prime Minister. These protesters aren't backing down. There are ambulances on site. There are casualties that we are seeing being escorted by other protesters also. But there is also a steady inflow of protesters that continue to walk down this road to join the movement, which is in its center right there, a few meters away from me right now. So the task for the acting president as of right now, as of immediately, is to instill some form of security and peace in the country.
Right. Also, Dasuni, if there is any clarity on the plan going forward, what can we expect?
Well, it is interesting to note that the speaker mentioned that he confirmed that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will be taken up as the acting president purely because President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is overseas, which can sort of mean that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa himself has not resigned it, but more or less has transferred the power to the Prime Minister to take over. So Sri Lanka's political future, like I've been mentioning for the past few weeks, still remains in doubt, given that there is no clear path or way forward.
Of course. Well, Dasuni, thank you so much for bringing us all the updates from Colombo. Now, just for better clarity here, let's just also retrace some of the events of the day. The situation in Colombo took a turn for the worse around noon. And our correspondent Dasuni Atoda was on ground and sent us this report showing us the intensity and the severity of the chaos on the streets. Take a look.
Steady inflow of tear gas that is being fired. The protesters are continuing to move away from the office of the Prime Minister, which is now the epicenter of tensions here in Sri Lanka. There is a steady round of tear gas that is being fired, but the protesters are still defiant to stay on and protest. Army officials continue to stand guard here outside the office of the Prime Minister. Emergency law has been imposed here in Sri Lanka, but the protesters at this very specific location are refusing to leave. There have been steady rounds of tear gas that were fired just moments ago, but the protesters continue to remain defiant. Sri Lanka is amidst a worsening economic crisis as well as a political crisis, with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa this morning. Things are heating up. The situation is pretty tense. Stay with WION as we bring you the very latest, reporting from outside the office of the Prime Minister. I'm Dasuni Atoda. Tear gas continues to be fired here at regular intervals right outside the office of the Prime Minister. As you can see, the protesters are running for cover after strong rounds of tear gas were fired at them. Now, this comes at a time where Sri Lanka's speaker has confirmed that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will now be the acting president of Sri Lanka. Stay with me on as we bring you the very latest, reporting from Colombo. I'm Dasuni Atoda.
Now, for more context on the developing situation in Sri Lanka, we were earlier joined by M. Ashraf Haidari, Afghanistan's ambassador to Sri Lanka. Let's just listen into his insights.
Well, it's very unfortunate that the situation has unfolded in Sri Lanka as it has pretty much since 2019 when the Easter terrorist attacks happened and Sri Lanka was hit hard by the economic consequences of those terrorist attacks, and then moving on, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic happened that not only affected Sri Lanka, but the rest of the world, but specifically Sri Lanka, since the remittances that Sri Lankans used to send home, that almost stopped, and as well as their tourism industry, a major part of Sri Lanka's economy, unfortunately, heavily suffered. And then, of course, the Ukraine and Russia war that has affected the global commodities and as well as energy prices. An island nation like Sri Lanka had dependent on imports of those essential items, food and fuel, from global markets that have now not only, of course, affected Sri Lankans, but people around the world, even here in the United States. Gas prices have skyrocketed. So as a result, the combination of internal issues, especially economic mismanagement that had been happening in Sri Lanka, not just over the past 3 or 4 years, but for many years, which cumulatively led to the situation that we're seeing today. Well, Sri Lankans are very capable people. Their politicians, the elite, are very capable, and it now boils down to the Sri Lankan parliament, the speaker, as your reporter pointed out, and as well as the prime minister, who is said that he would resign once an all-parties government is formed, and then they would have to move on once the president is officially, formally resigned, to have an acting president, and then move on to the next constitutional step, which is for the members of the Sri Lankan parliament to vote for a president from among themselves to serve the remainder of the president's 2-year time in office. So now it's really in the hands of the Sri Lankans and Sri Lankan political leaders themselves. And the sooner they move there, I think the sooner they would be able to then negotiate economic assistance with IMF, and as well as major players such as China, United States, and European countries, or the EU, and others, including, of course, India, which has already provided a major credit line of support to help Sri Lanka overcome the situation.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.